Today's reading comes from Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Medcalf. One summer day, the weather was so hot and humid that Sensei actually told the apprentices to stop chopping wood and carrying water an hour early in order for everyone to spend some time in the nearby lake. On the way to the water, Akira asked John if anyone had told him the story, Evil's Best Weapon. John said that no one had, and Akira smiled wide. Then you are in for a treat. As they walked, he began his story. One day, an evil old witch was going out of business, and she had a yard sale to sell potions and tools. You could buy all the traditional tools you think of when you think of evil: jealousy, anger, lust, pride, envy, deceit, and adultery. Droves of people flocked to the sale, and all her shiny tools were sold to the highest bidder. Towards the end of the day, after all the tools had been well picked through, all that remained were a few trash heaps of old, worn-out, and broken tools. One gentleman dug through the scraps and found a tool that was very well worn, and looked like it was on its last leg. Hoping for a good deal, he brought it to the woman to ask how much it cost. The old witch was startled. "That tool is too valuable for me to sell. It is the only one I'm passing down to my niece. Give it back to me. It should not have been out here." Now the man was even more intrigued. "But it's so worn, and yet you claim it's worth more than all these other shinier and newer tools. I must know what it is." The witch refused to tell him, and instead, she pried it from his hands and asked him to leave. She took the old tool back and hid it in her house, and by the end of the day, every other tool had been sold except for that one. A few months later, the witch was on her deathbed. She called for her niece. Her niece was very angry. She had sold all her fancy tools. "How could you sell all your tools and not pass them on to me?" she shouted. The old witch waited for her to calm down, and then told her to look under her bed. The niece looked under her bed, but all she saw was an old, worn-out tool. She was surprised. "This? This old thing is all you left me?" The old witch looked at her and said, "Oh, how naive you are, young child. This tool is discouragement, and it is more powerful than all the other tools combined. The best part is that most people never suspect that it comes from you. Discouragement will allow you to get a person's heart when none of the other tools will. And once they become discouraged, they are putty in your hands. You can squash the most powerful of dreams, level the greatest of ideas, and ruin almost anything in the world without detection, all by using this tool to plant a seed of discouragement." And with nothing but the single tool of discouragement, her niece went on to become one of the most powerful witches to ever live. John, one of the most powerful forces you will face during your time here is discouragement. It can come in many different forms. Sometimes it is the voice inside your head that says you aren't good enough, while other times it might come from giving your best and still not succeeding. Still, other times it will creep in ways you might not have even been aware. But make sure you always keep up your guard and fuel your heart with encouragement. John nodded, asking, "How do I fuel my heart?" Akira smiled. "Good question. You fuel your heart with 6 things: what you watch, what you read, what you listen to, who you surround yourself with, how you talk to yourself, and what you visualize." Let me ask you a question. If you owned a Lamborghini, would you ever put water into the gas tank? John looked up in confusion. "Of course not. That would ruin the engine." "Exactly," Akira said. "But this is what most people do with their hearts. You and I were created just like that Lamborghini. But if we put the wrong fuel into the gas tank of our hearts, we won't run as we were intended to. We get frustrated and discouraged because we know deep down that we were created for so much more. We were created perfectly and meticulously for a purpose, John. But if you put the wrong fuel into your gas tank, it is very easy to get discouraged and break down as you go through the journey of life."